Good afternoon, everybody. This is Anna Jenkins, Marketing Coordinator at Core BTS, and welcome to today's webinar, Cutting Costs with Visibility into IT Energy Consumption. Throughout our presentation this afternoon, we encourage you to interact with us by typing in questions and comments using the Q&A pane in the Event Center. We'll be answering questions live both during the event and after the presentation. And at this time, I'll pass it along to Jim to get us started.
Great, thank you, Anna. Welcome, everyone. I want to say thank you for everyone for joining the session on cutting costs with visibility into IT energy consumption, which is really the introduction into Cisco energy management. So there may be some folks that are on the webinar that are not Core BTS customers, so I did want to spend just a couple of minutes just introducing Core BTS, who we are, what our footprint is, and what our key offerings are. So if you look at the map here from a national standpoint, we're in maybe 8 to 10 states, and we probably have 14 to 15 locations spread across North America today. From an offering perspective, we really built the organization around 3 main pillars. So on the left, if you look at converged data center, these are things like storage solutions, converged architecture, server infrastructure, backup solutions, virtualization, anything around a converged data center. In the center, we have our collaboration practice, which really deals with mobility, presence, unified messaging, voice, and video. And then to the far right, a very important pillar, especially with recent events that have occurred, we have our compliance and security pillar of Core BTS. And really that team focuses on assessments, penetration tests, compliance, remediation, things like business continuity, disaster recovery, business impact analysis. So those are the 3 pillars that are driving the organization. And then to really pull it all together, we have a PSO, a professional services organization, that has components of staffing services as well as learning services. And then on top, we have our cloud and managed services. If you look at what we have here from a cloud managed service standpoint, we have a variety of organic services that are homegrown Core BTS services, such as our NOC team, our monitoring and management solutions, our help desk offering. Then we also have some cloud backup and DR offerings as well, with key partners like Cisco, VMware, Microsoft, cloud compute, infrastructure as a service. So you look at those, the top 2 pieces really pull everything together from an engagement perspective in terms of executing on a plan, and also a day 2 support on a go-forward basis once that plan's been put in place. In terms of industry experience, we really run across all verticals that you'll see. So what we have done is we have mapped a lot of our account managers into specific verticals because they have key knowledge about that vertical. So partnerships. So we feel that we have best-of-breed partnerships, and if you look at what we have here in the top line, Cisco Gold Partner, EMC Partner, NetApp Partner, VMware Partner, these are what we feel are our Tier 1 partnerships. We really align the business around these partnerships. On the bottom here, you also have very important partnerships, and I'll mention a couple of them. Alert Logic is a very important partnership that we have, Veeam, SourceFire, Windstream. So we also wrap around some secondary partnerships to really fill in some of the gaps. So now that you know a little bit about Core BTS and really what we do and what we can offer customers like yourself, let's really get into the energy management piece of the conversation. So if we take a step back and we just say, let's look at some drivers that's really showing that dramatic growth in energy management, let's look at some of the business drivers. If you look at corporate citizenship, right, doing the right thing in terms of green initiatives. If you look at our environment, right, reducing our carbon footprint around the environment. Competitive pressures. So this is interesting here because if you can really optimize power management in your environment and have a leg up on the competition, you can reinvest those dollars saved into more strategic activities within your organization. Escalating energy prices is interesting because you'll see, I think we use 13 cents a kilowatt hour as an average for energy costs, but I can tell you just in New York State alone, we have such a variation in terms of energy costs. So take Long Island, specifically Manhattan, you're looking at 19, 20 cents a kilowatt hour. And then you look at upstate New York or Western New York, it's more around the 13 cents. So just within New York State, you have a variation in energy costs. And then finally, regulatory requirements. So from an IT perspective, if you're looking at drivers, let's look at just what is the total consumption from an IT perspective within the enterprise. And if you look at it, it's around 25 to 80% from an IT perspective. So it is the largest unmanaged expense in the enterprise. And we can provide 100% visibility into the IT power consumption and save you dollars. If we look towards the middle, we have data center power constraints. And this is interesting just because I've worked in many data centers. What we're really good at is filling the data center up with infrastructure. What we tend to not do is really decommission equipment and pull things out of the data center. So what happens is data centers just grow to the point that they're out of capacity or they're oversubscribed. And so 30% of all data centers are really over power capacity and power constrained. So we can help bring visibility into what is that IT energy footprint look like from a data center perspective and get some visibility into what we're consuming. And then you look on the far left from an IT facilities convergence. This is interesting. So the first convergence I went to from an IT perspective was really IT telecom, right? So IT telecom lines were blurred with the adoption of VoIP or IP phone services. And so suddenly the telecom team was working with the IT team. And we're seeing the same thing happen now with facilities. Facilities and IT are really converging. So energy data is fragmented across the enterprise, and IT networking is converging to provide ubiquitous access to all systems and devices. And this is going on today. And I can tell you just a little side note, many people in the audience that we've spoken to, whether it's at events, whether it's at customer meetings, we've seen IT folks as our audience, we've seen business officials, we've seen facility managers, we've seen principals of schools, superintendents of schools. So really energy management is something that from an awareness perspective is across the entire organization. Right now we're dealing with it and from an IT perspective, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So Cisco Energy Management, you may hear me call it SEM, so it's traditionally Cisco is calling it SEM or Cisco Energy Management. I'll use both of those interchangeably throughout the presentation. But Cisco Energy Management, in its simplest form, this is what it does. It identifies all IT assets. It monitors utilization and power. It controls energy usage and load. And finally, it reports energy stats on the IT network. This is what the entire solution does in a nutshell. Very simple, not a lot to it, but this is what we've been lacking within IT energy management. So SEM made simple. So it brings power, energy, visibility, and control into your organization. So it's very difficult to measure something that you can't see, and then we can't control it, and then we can't report on it. So that's the key. The key thing from this slide is to really say, hey, we want to bring that visibility into the picture. So once we can see it, we can measure it. Once we measure it, now we can start to figure out what is our ROI? What is the reduction in carbon footprint? What is our reduction in energy costs? All that good stuff. So this is interesting. So any of the folks that are on the phone that have kids, this may resonate with you. So I tell this story a lot to customers. I have a couple of kids, and they leave the lights on throughout the house. No matter how many times I tell them, you got to turn the lights off, they're kids. They don't turn off the lights. So this past year, I went through and I replaced every one of my bulbs in my house. with some really efficient energy-saving bulbs. And there was a cost to do that. So now that I did that, I solved the problem a little bit because I brought down my energy costs. But I didn't completely solve the problem because my kids still don't turn the lights off. So it's interesting. So what I was missing is the control mechanism to actually turn those lights off. And that's really what Cisco Energy Management is going to give us. It's going to give us the ability to power things down, to put things to sleep, to put things in hibernation mode. So reasons for dramatic growth in energy management. So this is a busy slide, but if we follow it from left to right, it's going to start to make sense. So if we look at the total energy consumption within your organization, it breaks down to about 25 to 50% of it comes across from a building perspective. So then when we take that percentage and we say, what is the IT equipment breakdown? It's around 25%. And then when we further break it down, we look at, hey, from a 25% IT equipment perspective, what are the low-hanging fruit that we can go after? And if you look here on the right side of this, the PCs, laptops, and monitors are the low-hanging fruit. The rest of this infrastructure is certainly in play, but this is the easiest piece to deal with, and that's what we're going to talk about today. For the next couple of slides, I'm going to let Chad Sleeman chime in, and this is really going to talk about the whole entire ecosystem for Cisco Energy Management for all network connected devices and systems, regardless of our vendor type.
Yeah, thanks, Jim, and thanks everybody for your time today. So just building on what Jim has shared with you, right? Visibility is key. You can't manage what you can't see. So at the end of the day, historically, we've done it from a facility perspective. It was proprietary, also partial and limited. Now we have the IT, and everything is right now residing on the IP network with the advancement of technology and the proliferation of the IP network, right? So at the end of the day, we want to look at things holistically. So if you look at the energy domains within an enterprise, you see things from a campus perspective, data center, as well as facility. So Cisco Energy Management handles the campus as well as the data center, and you see the spread of devices that are within campus. Basically, we call it distributed office environment. So any device that is referred to as the traditional IT device resides on the IP network, we can pick it up, as well as within the data center, whether it's an infrastructure of the data center, it's compute resources, servers, as well as storage. And that surrounded with, our partners. So this is the partners ecosystem that we play with, we collaborate with, we do a lot of R&D with to provide the best of breed outcomes with such solution. Now take the facility as well, right, which will resonate to a lot of folks right here on this call. You guys have done a lot of probably proactive approaches and taking a lot of measures towards being more sustainable and efficient and greener. But with facility, you're only limited to that subset of the HVAC, the mechanical, and all that within, that portion tied into a BMS. We can integrate with the BMS piece of it with facility equipment as well. And then we provide you with that holistic visibility. So now you look at the environment through a single pane of glass and see through everything and be able to quantify and measure and take the instrumented approach as well as a manual intervention to be able to become greener and satisfy your corporate sustainability initiatives, if you will. And also demonstrates the partners ecosystem and the different partners that we play with, as well as partner with, collaborate, and do a lot of R&D to make sure that we evolve the product to fit the market standards as well as the open standards and architectures out there. Next slide, Jim. So building on that, so this really just takes it home as far as an integration architecture, right? So you look at it from a network infrastructure. everybody invests in switches and routers and everything that ties in, you know, the enterprise from a network capability. So whether it's Cisco or not, it doesn't matter to us. We are agnostic from an energy management suite. But if it is Cisco, there's an added benefit. So we've developed, you know, the SDKs that allow us to tie into the infrastructure. And then from there, we can provide the full capability around the monitoring, measuring, and the management of the IT devices, or what we refer to as the edge devices within the environment, whether it is distributed offices, data center, or anything that is leveraging power over Ethernet, being the switch or that router as the power source to power the IP phones, the access points, IP cameras, so on and so forth. So you take it one step level and we talk about the access and visibility. So we provide enterprise-wide dashboard capabilities. So that would be your single pane of view, if you will. And then if we feel that we need to diversify and connect to the different, you know, systems there, you know, namely the building management systems and other disparate facility systems, if you will, we can leverage gateways out there that allow us to tie into those devices. So now we're network enabling those devices, we're connecting them on the network, and we're able to just bring visibility to them and manageability as well. Or we can directly leverage web services API integration with the building management systems that leverage the same standards and protocols, you know, from a network perspective, and allow us to tie in and bring and converge the capabilities of both systems to provide that greater capabilities to you. And next slide, Jim. Yeah.
Thanks, Chad.
I'll kick it back to you. Yeah.
Yep, excellent. Thank you, Chad. Just to sum up the last two slides that Chad has spoken about, if you look at what Cisco has done, Cisco has really built a vendor-neutral, hardware-agnostic platform. So this is a platform that we can build upon. We focus on IP-enabled devices today. Tomorrow we focus on integration with BMS. So it's a great platform to start. If we look at the SimCloud architecture, I just want to cover what goes on-prem, what's going to be in the cloud. And if you look at from a simple customer on-prem scenario, we can have one or many controllers within that campus environment, right? And that's really the data collection device. It measurements, does policy. This is on-prem in your environment. If we look at where is the SIM server located, that's located in Cisco's cloud, right? And that's where we have all our database, our analytics, reports, management interface. All of that is in Cisco's cloud. It's a SaaS-based application, and it is a single pane of glass to manage all of your IP-enabled energy management devices. So really two main components, your controllers, which are on-prem, and then we have our SIM server, which is a SaaS-based application, which is in Cisco's cloud. So the industry's first agentless energy management piece. So let's just go through this from an agent perspective. This is where I see Cisco has a great solution and a leg up on some of the competitors that are out there that deploy agents. So we see agents, and I've been in IT for a long time. There's an agent for just about everything that you could have: antivirus, backup, VM tools. Everything has an agent, and there's a very large cost to manage agents within an environment. The nice part about the Cisco Energy Management solution is there are no software agents, right? So you don't have to deal with not only deploying those agents, but then managing the agents, updating them, patching them, troubleshooting them, really the whole 9 yards. So that's a great first step from an agent perspective. No software agents going to be deployed. Hardware meters, there are no hardware meters, so you don't have to go in and buy expensive hardware meters. We're actually reporting the IT energy consumption right down to the device with no hardware meters. From a network perspective, there are no network changes that are needed, no downtime associated with this. So if you look at this, it's a very low touch, very easy implementation. We can deploy it in hours with around a 3 to 6 month return on that investment. And that wouldn't be possible if we had to do massive changes to your network, if we had to deploy appliances or physical devices, if we had to deploy agents across thousands of devices, that would be a much more difficult task. So in terms of funding energy management projects, what we've seen, I've put together a list, and this is not a complete list. So there's going to be other ways to fund, certainly state-specific ways, but if you look at what we have here in terms of capital projects, this is a great way to build this into a full capital project. Energy companies are another great example to look at. What rebates are energy companies giving us for me to move forward with an energy management project? State Education Department, that's a great one for K through 12. EO88, that's another one. NYSERDA, so that's another program that a lot of our customers leverage when you're looking at energy management programs. And the nice part about this application is it can report and give you the data that you need to submit to these entities. Because you have to be able to prove that you not only are you measuring it, monitoring it, and controlling it and saving energy, you have to be able to report on all that and send that to these agencies. If you look at K through 12, BOCES 8, that's another great way to fund it if you're in the K through 12 space. Energy performance contracting, that's one where we look at some of these contracts that we were working with BMS partners like Johnson Controls or Siemens, and we can build this solution right into their contract. And then last but not least, Cisco Capital is a great way to actually leverage Cisco Capital to move a Cisco energy management project forward. So these are just a few of the ways that we put here that we're working with customers today to fund these projects that will help you get started. Now, I wanted to give you an example of what it would look like if we were going to go and invest in some infrastructure. So if we can save your OpEx, reduce that footprint, and pay for your Cisco gear at the same time, this is how we do it. So if you look on the left here, we're going to invest in a Catalyst switch, and we're going to hang 48 devices off of that switch. We could have a mixture of PCs, laptops, access points, IT phones, you name it. We look at the energy footprint of those 48 devices and the switch itself, and we start to look at what is the energy cost from an annual perspective on the switch and all the connected devices. And if you look at what we have here, this is traditional energy cost without any energy management or energy-wise. We look at, let's roll out energy management with the new infrastructure, and we look at what our costs have reduced to. And this is on an annual basis. So you can see now that we invest in infrastructure, we also look at how can we reduce the total cost of ownership of that infrastructure that we're deploying, right? So now from an energy management standpoint, we do our best to reduce the operational cost of that infrastructure, and then we're able to actually reduce the payback period for that actual device. So if you look at what we're saving, it's around 35% is what we use from an average standpoint. We can see more, we can see less, but we use about 35% as a good round number in terms of what you would have for a traditional switch with a bunch of different access devices hanging off it. In terms of what types of customers are used in Cisco Energy Management, it really runs the gamut from a vertical perspective. So you'll see some logos in there for some K through 12 school districts. You'll see some manufacturing customers. You'll see healthcare customers. I see some banking, some financial services customers. So really everyone can benefit from Cisco Energy Management. It's just if you don't have visibility into your energy consumption, it's very difficult to start tracking the savings. All these organizations made the investment into energy management. So let's do a recap of kind of what we've learned so far. And anything that falls outside of this recap, we're going to cover in the demo to really give you a full comprehensive look at Cisco Energy Management. So we talked about the 35% savings in distributed office environments. So Chad talked about that in the ecosystem slide, right? So distributed office environments, campus environments, we do see that 35% savings. 100% visibility over all physical and virtual devices in your data center. So that's an important aspect here is if it has an IP address, we can look at that asset and we can manage the power. Less than 6 months return on investment. That's a great ROI, and it's really 3 to 6 months, depending on your environment. This is important, the single pane of glass. I know, a lot of IT costs is management, and if you look at a way to consolidate management of power, we start to really have a great conversation around Cisco Energy Management, because that can be that platform and the single pane of glass to look at all of your energy needs across your organization, from a campus perspective, data center, and a BMS. Multi-vendor provides detailed inventory of all IP-connected devices in the network. And we say multi-vendor because this is not just for Cisco devices. This is hardware agnostic, vendor agnostic. It works across all IP-enabled devices. From an architecture standpoint, very flexible policy architecture allows the management of different energy spends in the campus and the data center. In these policies, we can have one or many policies to apply to different types of devices to really get a finely tuned, highly optimized energy management platform. Green IT compliance, this is another one that provides the ability to quantify and validate green IT compliance requirements. Again, heavy focus on the reporting side of it in order to give us the details we need. Internet of Things, this is something that Cisco's been talking a lot about with customers, and we have been doing the same, really supporting the adoption and the integration of the Internet of Things devices into the overall asset management capabilities of SEM. If you look at the proliferation of IT or IP-enabled devices out there, you're seeing more and more IP-enabled devices out there. Suddenly the network becomes extremely important in terms of the payload that it's carrying. So as we see that proliferation go, we can leverage Cisco Energy Management to tap into the energy consumption of those devices.
Hey,
we talked about the light.
Jim, if I may add just one simple comment to this, if that's okay. So folks, we are about 15 billion connected devices today on the network. It's projected by year 2020, there's going to be about 50 billion devices connected across a corporate environment, distributed office, or a data center. And with the adoption of these, wearable devices, it's projected that almost every user is going to have about 5 to 6 devices connected to them. So energy follows the user. The connectedness on the network is becoming essential. So if you think about it that way, the network is becoming that focal point as far as connectedness, as well as the energy consumption source. So it matters to us that we focus on it that way and address it accordingly.
Excellent. Thank you, Chad.
Thanks.
Simple light touch implementation. We talked about this on a prior slide. This is very low touch because we don't have to make any network changes. We don't have to deploy agents, and there are no hardware devices. So very light touch, proven energy management technology. It doesn't use agents and appliances and require any of those changes that we talked about on the network. Device replacement, really supporting direct A to B model comparison of devices to identify refresh opportunities and replacement of high energy consuming devices in the network. Let me give you an example of that. When we work with K-12 school districts, we see a lot of legacy, older PCs on the network. So we'll see PCs that are 6, 7, 8 years old on that network. That device draws a lot more power than a 1-year-old device. So we start to look at the reporting metrics that we can get. We can start to look at these legacy devices and the cost to operate those devices for an organization or a school district, and then we can start to put together a refresh plan that makes sense, that will yield them the best return on the investment, because we can target those legacy devices. So this is one of those things that you don't really think about too much until you get into energy management and you start to run reports and you say, wow, this can really shape the way I run my IT budget now, when I'm doing refreshes, when I'm not. Very powerful. So from a UI perspective, Cisco has spent a lot of time making an unbelievable dashboard, and you're going to see Chad demonstrate some of those dashboards because we can have many of them if we need to. And a dashboard, think of a dashboard as really really it's an assembly of widgets in order to construct a pane of glass that's going to make sense to you as a user. And an example is, if you're a facilities manager, maybe your dashboard is going to be very focused on a lot of DMS. Maybe it's going to be data center focused just from a total draw perspective. If you're an IT analyst, maybe your dashboard is going to be more focused on the IT devices that we see. And so Chad is going to demonstrate this for us so we can see it live. So Chad, I'm going to hand over the roles to you so you can pull your demo up.
Thanks, Jim. All right, can you guys see my my screen?
Excellent.
All right, very good. So continuing on, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, based on what Jim mentioned to you. So we'll start with the dashboards, right? Visibility, a single pane of glass. Dashboarding is really key in almost everything we do today. So having the ability of just providing the view for the right user or viewer is key. So in this case, you see a dashboard that is comprised of a lot of widgets that Jim touched on. So you can move these widgets and lay out the dashboard however you want to, based on what works best for you. So you can see we can get a lot of information in these widgets. We have so many options right here to create the different widgets, specifically around energy, the device itself, the actual health of the system, the Cisco Energy Management System itself. We can create different charts, line charts, pie charts, around data center, PUE, you know, and create floor plans as well, as I will show right here. But in this case, you can see we created widgets around the savings based on the device. So you see the different device types right here, whether it's Windows, switches, monitors, HVAC, printer, IP phones. We can pick up meters as well, Macs, wireless LAN access points, you know, VMware from a data center virtualization perspective, you name it, right? We can do the same thing from a consumption perspective, and you see the spread based on the price per kilowatt hour and the actual percentage used by each device type. We can do the same thing by the actual location. So each devices have a location associated with them. We can represent that here as well by the category and the actual location and give you that information for your view. Also, we can create pie charts so you can see the spread of the different device types within your organization. We can create energy consumption line charts where you can compare historic or just simply look into the different peak and off-peak usage per time of day or per, you know, a certain timestamp or a date, if you will, and understand where the consumption is and, you know, where it could be, you know, inefficiencies or gaps. Power usage, we can provide that meter to just see the complete load or the power consumption for that location or that organization or that enterprise. We can do a matrix where you can actually demonstrate the kilowatt usage per a certain time of the day for a certain day of the week. Savings as well, so we can extrapolate the savings in that location or that enterprise, the actual correlating cost based on the price for that location, as well as the reduction in the CO2 footprint, as well as the device information specific, or how many devices we have in this location. In this case, we have about 25K roughly. How many are on, off, you know, standby, hibernate based on their actual status, or if an actual policy or a rule that power manages those devices or device segments is basically has been implemented or applies to them. We can go and create IT dashboard specific to IT, devices. We can create an office view, so I can map out an office or a department or a business unit within your, organization, and I could map out the energy consumption for all the different devices within that floor, whether it's a phone or a laptop or an access point or an IP camera, and then I could basically generate an actual total load for that floor as well. I can map out a data center, and obviously this should be color-coded. I'm getting a lag right here, so forgive me for not showing the codes, the color codes, so you get color legend associated with the consumption. So we can pick up the actual infrastructure components, the CRAC units, the PDUs, the power distribution units, the UPS systems. We go down to the rack itself, and I'll show further down the demo where we get that information from. So I can map out the rack, the actual devices within the rack, and I'll give you a complete load for that specific rack. And the key thing is we're not going to an actual rectifier or a PDU or a meter to get that. We're going down to the actual device itself as the power consumption source, and this is key in how we run our intelligence and algorithms to be able to just provide that optimization and efficiency, if you will. Also, we can do a campus-wide type of a dashboard. So now I can map out your school district, I can map out your different locations, whether they're within one geographic location or geographically distributed, and can bring in, the actual load per building per that specific, in that specific campus. And I'll show you a complete campus load as you need. We can do system-specific dashboard, system health for the folks that will administer and keep an eye on the system as well to show what's going on. So this is from a dashboarding perspective. We go down and we look at the actual device dashboard and the different devices that we have picked up, where we created the widgets with all these informations. You can see that we have so many different devices right here. I have about 3,000 devices right here. I should have more, definitely. But you can see that I have a spread of all the different devices by the power consumption, the actual IP address of it, how we pick it up, and that's how we are agentless. We use the network itself, the existing network, to be able to just discover those devices. We can list it by the device type, the location of that device, the business unit, the model, right? So we have so many of them right here. We can go through it. And on the left side right here, this is really a shortcut pane, if you will, for what we see right here. So I can go on a filter by owner. If there's an owner for specific devices, I can go by a specific school if I want to, the district, the different, buildings within that school district, right? I could go down to the status, and I'll see the actual status for the different devices there, the load from an HVAC, lighting, as well as plug load, right? So now we're talking IT, emerging IT, as well as facility systems. And we can go down to the actual location. I can sort by location. So if I want to look at devices within data center 1, I click on data center 1, and this view will change. And I'll see all the different devices right here. I'll even go to the actual data center, and I'll go per rack, and I'll see the devices in rack 2. I'll even go to the specific slot within that device. And that will apply to almost every device out there. I'll double click on that device, and you'll see that every device has a profile based on that information and the properties that we gathered, from a status, the power quality index, utilization, the name plate or the faceplate info, as well as properties around that device, where you can see I have so much info gathered right here that I can use based on my, for my reporting and policies and all that. So I can be as granular or as high level as I want to when applying my policies. So on and so forth. I mean, you can see that I can sort it by device type. I have data center devices, HVAC, meters, monitors, Linux, Windows, so on and so forth. And any one I click on right here, I'll get the actual correlating view to it, filtered by that type. Or I can break it by business unit, which is key, right? For you guys to quantify the energy spend and align your budgets, you need to understand where the gaps and the inefficiencies are. So going down to the actual business unit and having that information readily available to you, you'll be able to extrapolate reports that allow you to just figure out your budgeting and your financials, the spend and efficiencies, and how can you become more sustainable and take the relevant measures, if you will. So this is from devices. So you have the visibility, you have the measurement, you have the monitoring. We go down to the policies. So you see we need rules, we need management. This is a management platform. So we have different types of policies. Jim touched on flexible policy architecture. So we have time-based policies. We can put things on a timer. We can put things based on an event. So if we can tie into a fire alarm or a weather station or a badge system or access control or you name it, and we can get an event ID, and then we can take the action correlating to that specific event. If it's a fire, we need to shut off everything before anything happens, or it's a weather event and everything is going to be shut off. I can basically instrument that rather than having someone come into the school and under these dire weather conditions to be able to shut these things off. So we can do all that. From a time-based, it's simply defining a timer where I can select the power state I want to put the devices. I'll drag and drop, and then my devices will adhere to this policy. I can even issue a message where I can communicate with my users saying, look, your machine has been idle for quite some time. We enroll in a power management policy. You have a certain amount of time to basically just continue your work or acknowledge this message, and then your machine will be put in the proper power state, if you will. We can power cap, we can do a random status, we can do gazillion things. So there's location-based, there's data center-specific, policies where we can go right into the utilization and the power consumption of a server, and then fine-tune it and give it a tune-up to be able to just run optimally versus running at 100% all the time or consuming all the power that it needs to consume or will be consuming at a given time. So a 400-watt power supply doesn't need to be open all the way for a server when we can fine-tune it to a 200-watt power supply, and that server still runs as optimally as it needs to be, but we reduce that power consumption by half, if you will. It's just an example. So this is from a policy architecture. Go ahead. Sorry.
Chad, quick comment for you. Sure. And you're familiar with this because I know you'll know the customer. We had a customer ask us because they were so concerned about the end user experience and what they would see and would they be able to use. So what we can do is we could put PCs into hibernate. And so if you're worried about losing data, we can put it into hibernate, which saves a user session to memory and then writes that memory to disk, hibernates the PCs, and then we can develop a policy to bring those PCs out of hibernation first thing in the morning before the user even sits down at their desk. So now you've just addressed, so instead of actually powering the device off, we hibernate it, which roughly is about the same savings, but we save session and we bring it back up for the end user. So the end user experience is very important.
Yeah, great point, Jim. And actually hibernate and shut off is actually yields the same type of energy savings. It's basically the same thing. So we can definitely do that. All that is going to be instrumented, and this way the user will not face any issues or deal with any aftermath. But regardless, even if we do a shut-off, we do a graceful shut-off, so everything is preserved and done properly, if you will. But that's a great point. So this is from a policy perspective. You can see we have so many different policies around IT as well as the actual facility equipment and all that. So we are so adaptable, so flexible, and we're able to just do seamless integration with various systems and deploy policies and apply policies based on what fits your environment. So it's very flexible. Don't think it's going to be set out of the box, or I can't do anything. So it's up to you, Mr. User, based on our recommendations to just basically apply the policies that will work best for your environment however you want it, whether it's schools, freeze environment, or other locations or enterprises. We will work around that. So don't feel that you are stuck with one way of doing things versus another. So this is from a policy perspective. I want to be cognizant of the time and leave you guys some time for Q&A. We'll jump into the reporting. So what is a platform worth without having a reporting capability, right? So we'll jump into the reporting. I took the liberty of running some reports for the sake of time, but we'll really go into the actual reporting engine. We'll pick up some detailed reports. You see on the left side right here, we have so many categories of reports that we can pull up for you. And then within those categories, we have different flavors of those reports that we can pick up based on what, you know, is relevant to you and the information that you feel is relevant to you. So in this case, I picked up a consumption with stats report. So this shows you the actual graph for, you know, a 7-day, the last 7 days date range. You can actually pick up whatever date range or customize that date range for all the different devices or a specific device segment. It could be just monitors or PCs or Macs, however you want it to basically be. And then we'll give you that, you know, analytics right here, as well as the actual figures correlating to this. So the total actual consumption is 335 megawatts for the total of 25K devices, and the average consumption per device is about, you know, 13.5 kilowatt hours, right? So this is, you know, relevant info. We can jump in and just have an actual report around cost savings with ranking. So this is a different flavor of a report where I'm giving you the different locations participating in this initiative, and then everything has a color code, and you see that you have all the telemetry and the analytics based on the actual line charts and the graphs for that specific location, peak, off-peak, at any given time of the day. And then we, as well as we give you the actual ranking per that location. Total number of devices, the actual percentage of you know, savings, and the total numbers of devices for that specific location. So now you have those analytics. You can export it, you can import it, do whatever you want with it to be able to just take it and just you know, analyze it further if you want to. Also, we talked about utilization, so it comes down to the utilization of that device. However that device is behaving affects the actual consumption, so we can give you the actual snapshot of the utilization, specifically from a server perspective in a server farm or a data center. This becomes key and relevant in how we can approach it and optimize it. Just virtualizing doesn't mean that it's optimal, but taking a snapshot of at its utilization at any given time allows us to understand from a historic view how we can go optimize and fine-tune that data center or that server farm to basically make it much more efficient or even a high-utilized device. We talked about sustainable procurement, which is Model A to Model B replacement. Basically, take a device that you standardize on, right? In this, for the sake of this example, I took an HP. So you have so many devices in here that you can pick from, as long as we have visibility to them through your network. So you see that I have so many built in right here based on all the devices that I picked up. I picked up an HP server, and I said if I'm looking in my next refresh to go to a Cisco server, what would be the ramification? Is it going to be a better investment for me or not? In this case, I'll show you that switching from an HP to a Cisco, it's much better. The performance of an Cisco is 125% better than an HP, as well as it shows you the actual potential savings. You are in the green right here, so it gives you a forecast for the next 3 years that you save that much you know, money through energy cost reduction, as well as the energy reduced, as well as the CO2 footprint reduction that you have realized by doing that switch and making that smart procurement. Simple forecast, and it gives you a detailed breakout based on energy cost, energy consumption, as well as the actual CO2 emissions for month, year, and 3 years for almost every category right here. Last but not least, we talked about you know, projections, projected savings. So we have the ability of providing you with a projected ROI savings based on what we see from a historic consumption perspective. So we can create an actual baseline for the environment based on all the devices that participate in the energy management initiative, based on a date of consumption that we've gathered. And then what we do, we simulate a policy that says, without applying an actual policy, but the outcomes of a policy simulation, which says, look, what if we come in and we shut off our devices at turn them on at 8 in the morning and shut them off every day at 7 p.m.? What would be the outcome, assuming that we power them off on weekends? And you can play with the dates and create different scenarios, if you will. And the outcome would be, we can save you about 66% over a period of 12 months, which yields about 11.5 gigawatt savings. Correlates to about $1.1 million savings, and the reduction in CO2 footprint is about 6.9 megatons. So this is a really powerful report that you can standardize on, create different flavors, different scenarios, as well as take it to your utility and rebate programs out there to, you know, adhere to the process and just, you know, fulfill the obligation towards getting some of that money out there. And also gives you an idea about how, what's the potential is for the savings and then just adhere to that 3 to 6 months ROI. And this is all I have. We have about 6 minutes left. Appreciate you standing by with us right here. And I'll kick it back to you, Jim or Anna, for Q&A.
Great,
sure,
thanks,
so
Chad.
Looks like we have 3 pretty quick questions that came through. So the first one is, if I already have a workstation management application such as Microsoft SCCM, does this replace Cisco Energy Management?
That's a good question. So SCCM is actually one of the methods we support through Cisco Energy Management. So look at Cisco Energy Management as the overarching umbrella or feature-rich solution. And we are agnostic, right? So we are not focused on Microsoft devices only. SCCM is only focused on Microsoft Office devices. So if you have a diverse environment where you have so many different types of devices, you're only going to be able to manage just the Microsoft. With Cisco Energy Management, you manage all the different device types. Also, SCCM does not provide you with the flexible policy architecture or the visibility to be able to quantify and qualify the energy consumption, where you have the capability of doing a lot of things with it, and visibility is what matters, right? You can't manage what you can't see.
Great, thank you. So our second question here is, I'm concerned about accidentally shutting off a server. How would Cisco Energy Management deal with that?
Well, I mean, you can't accidentally shut off a server unless you have deployed a policy and you made a mistake. Typically, we spend the time with you to better understand your environment and help you better understand your environment. And if you feel that servers need to participate in a power management policy, we will recommend the best practices around how to do that and to avoid any costly mistakes, because servers are unique devices. So typically you don't shut off servers, you try to fine tune them and optimize them. But if you feel that you need to shut them off, we'll help you understand the policy engine and what policies would apply best to avoid any mistakes.
Thank you. And our final question here was, I have very little Cisco gear in my environment. Will this application still work on non-Cisco IP devices?
Absolutely. We talked about being multi-vendor, so we are agnostic from a vendor perspective and a device type. So don't feel limited or you know, feel intimidated or reluctant that if you don't have Cisco gear that, oh my God, this is not going to be a best fit. Actually, we recommend that you deploy it in environments where you don't have Cisco gear, so we can help you quantify and understand where would be the potential and the differentiation between Cisco and others, and what would be the potential for savings. Because we believe that the Cisco solution altogether has much more benefits because the way it is set up and designed compared to you know, the various vendors out there. In this way, we yield the best ROI for you, as well as we preserve the lowest total cost of ownership, and in turn basically puts money back in your pocket that you can repurpose towards other investments.
Great. It looks like we have another question that's coming through that Patrick is asking, how few IP devices can you have and still receive a 3 to 6 month ROI? Well, obviously, you need to have a certain size of an environment. I mean, if we're going to manage 10 devices, you know, compared to the cost of the software and the savings, it's not going to add up. So I would say at least we need to have between 500 to 1,000 devices to start with. And it could be just mainly focused around desktops, or it could be a diverse, you know, group of devices where you're putting printers, copiers, monitors, IP phones, and what have you. So anything that consumes energy and that is on your network will help provide, you know, energy savings through our policy engine. So I would say at least 500 to 1,000 devices to just see some good ROI that makes sense to balance the upfront cost of the software, as well as realize the ROI and leverage some of the rebates out there. Great. Thank you very much, Chad. If nobody has any further questions at this time, I would like to say that on behalf of myself and all of our presenters today, we thank you for joining us and taking time to view the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to marketing.team@corebts.com. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Take care.